I'm just as shocked as each and every single one of you. But Clemson pulls off the upset against Alabama 44 to 16. And this isn't really an upset. It's an upset, but it's just a complete domination, just a complete beating. 44 to 16. Now this is the worst that I've ever seen Alabama play football under Nick Saban. But let's rewind before we get into tonight. When the college football season started, I went through some teams that could beat Alabama, and I had Clemson as the best chance to beat Alabama because I think they had the depth and they had the defense to beat Alabama, which I kept saying that all throughout the season. And finally comes tonight, I still say that Clemson has a chance to win, but I didn't think they were going to completely dominate Alabama 44 to 16, 28 points. I could have never imagined that. I don't think anybody else could have ever imagined that. And I did think Alabama was going to win the national championship this season. And I can own that statement. But I did say that Clemson was the only team that could beat Alabama. And Clemson proved why tonight. They proved it. They just went out and proved it like 2 or 3 times. That's how dominant Clemson was tonight. But to get into the recap of this game, Clemson got the momentum early with that pick six in the first minute and a half of the game. Well, let's rewind just a little bit. Clemson gets the football first, start the game, and they go 3 and out. And then the question was after that, because it looked like Alabama had the early momentum just with that 3 and out. The question was how long could the defense keep Clemson in the game? Because I did not think that Clemson was going to keep them in the game for the full 60 minutes of the game. I thought eventually that Alabama would get points on the board. And that pick six to start off the game, it gave early momentum to Clemson. It gave them the fire early on. But then after that pick six, when Tua responded to that touchdown to tie the game at 7, it was the mentality that I'm sure a lot of us had was that was a good response from Tua. Everyone thought that maybe this was going to be a shootout. Everybody figured it was going to go back and forth. Ever since the semifinals were over with, everybody thought, at least a lot of people thought, that this was going to be a shootout. It was going to go back and forth and then back and forth. And then one team was going to give in. But what really was the turning point of the game was that, well, Clemson just dominated the game after that second quarter. But what really did Alabama in was that fake field goal attempt. And I don't know why they were going to try to fake that on that formation, but Clemson was ready for it. They knew it was happening because Alabama, they have struggled in the kicking game in recent years. In fact, they missed the extra point earlier on in that. But Clemson's defense, though, they held Alabama scoreless in the final 44 minutes of the game. Now, that is something that you would never see. You never thought you would see that from a Nick Saban Alabama team. But what is surprising from the offense is that it wasn't necessarily the veterans. It's kind of like the unsung hero type of thing. But you have Trevor Lawrence, freshman, Justin Ross, Travis Etienne. The underclassmen is what dominated the game for Clemson. And you can't really discredit the defense at all because they held Alabama scoreless for 44 straight minutes, only giving up 16 points to Alabama. Trevor Lawrence went 20 for 32 for 347 yards and 3 touchdowns. Etienne, 14 carries, 86 yards, 2 touchdowns. And Justin Ross, 6 receptions, 153 yards, and 1 touchdown. So this Clemson offense, it is a young offense, and they're definitely going to be back next season. And they should, at least at the very worst, go 11-1. I honestly expect to see these two teams play each other again, whether it's in the semifinal or the national championship again. Both these teams, they have young talent on the teams. I really don't think that this loss tonight by Alabama, it defines the whole dynasty, doesn't define the legacy. Both these teams have young talent, and they're almost bound to be back next season. But the big takeaway from tonight is Clemson played a perfect football game tonight. In fact, I've mentioned a couple of times throughout the season how you're going to beat Alabama. You have to do three things. One, you have to force turnovers. Clemson did that. They got 2 turnovers from Tua Tagovailoa. They had 2 turnovers. They scored 14 points off turnovers. So that is a huge. So Clemson checkmarked the box right there as they won the turnover battle, forced turnovers. Number 2, you got to dominate the time of possession. And even though Clemson didn't win the time of possession, they took advantage of the turnovers. And you don't necessarily have to win the time of possession, but winning the time of possession is a huge advantage. But Alabama, they had the right responses for turnovers. They went back to what was successful for them all season. That was running the football with Damian Harris, Najee Harris, even Josh Jacobs and the Wildcat. But Alabama just couldn't finish off drives tonight. They had a couple fourth down conversions, but they just couldn't convert every single time. And that's what really did Alabama in. The failed fake field goal attempt is what really did it in. I feel like that was what really was the final nail in the game tonight. And then the third thing that you have to do to beat Alabama is you have to play near perfect football. You can't turn the football over, and that's what Clemson did tonight. Clemson played a perfect football game. They played it perfectly. And the scoreboard even proves it, 44-16 over a Nick Saban Alabama team. And what was the question mark for me coming into this is, would Trevor Lawrence look like a freshman? I thought he was going to in this game. I can own the statements that I made. And I'm really surprised of how well he did. And it didn't faze him at all. And it didn't faze anybody on the Clemson team tonight. But what really made this season just a championship-winning decision. There was 2 championship-winning decisions here. And one was by the Clemson defense, and one was by Dabo Swinney. The one by the Clemson defense, just that whole front 4, Dexter Lawrence, even though he didn't play in the playoffs. I'm surprised that Clemson's defense was able to step up despite Dexter Lawrence not being there. Although Alabama, their running game, it looked pretty solid throughout. They were getting chunk plays here and there, but once again, they just couldn't finish the drives with points. They were able to get the ball down the field, but they just couldn't generate points, and that's what did Alabama in. But the decision the Clemson defense made, Austin Bryant, Cullen Farrell, Dexter Lawrence, deciding to come back for your senior season because they knew that this team was something special. And Christian Wilkins, what those 4 guys did, Cullen Farrell, Christian Wilkins, Dexter Lawrence, Austin Bryant, deciding to return for one more season, knowing that this team had something special. That was a championship-winning move. And the other championship-winning move by Dabo Swinney, naming Trevor Lawrence the starting quarterback. In the middle of the season, when Kelly Bryant, he was struggling through those first 4 weeks of the season. Even some Clemson fans on Twitter earlier in the season I was noticing is one in particular, it said that why does Dabo Swinney have the seniority favoritism? And that changed by naming Trevor Lawrence the starting quarterback in the middle of the season. It did lead to Kelly Bryant transferring, but I'm sure Kelly Bryant may be regretting the decision now, or maybe not. But that's neither here nor there. That's something different for another day. But that winning move from Dabo Swinney. Dabo Swinney knew what he was doing when he was naming Trevor Lawrence the starting quarterback. And not only is that a championship-winning move, but this could be the start of a next big dynasty if it's not already being formed as a massive dynasty. Because he's only a freshman, so he's got to play at least 2 more years to declare for the NFL draft. And this offense is a completely young team. I'm very confident that defense is going to reload. And even last year, with everyone thought that Clemson was coming off a national championship last season. Well, back in 2016, But everyone thought that in 2017 this could be a small step back season for Clemson. But they still made the college football playoff. And now that their defense is going to be leaving for the NFL, they might be thinking this again. But you got to not forget what happened tonight. And you can't forget that Trevor Lawrence is only a freshman. ETN is only a sophomore. Justin Ross, only a freshman as well. So, as far as moving on to next season, I feel like it's a little too early for that. We just got to kind of process some things a little bit more. Although I do have the confidence that Clemson and Alabama will both be back in the college football playoff next season. I mean, I really do. And it wouldn't surprise me if we see these two teams play each other for the championship again next season. And who even knows? Whether or not Clemson would dominate again, or maybe Alabama gets redemption. But tonight was the worst game that I've seen Alabama play under Nick Saban. And we'll just see what happens. But Clemson played a perfect football game tonight, and you can't discredit them for that. They did everything they needed to do to beat Alabama. They played the perfect game. They forced turnovers. And they dominated time possession, even though they only had the ball for about 28 minutes. That's still somewhat dominating that time of possession. Especially when they were in the lead and they just held the ball for a little bit longer. They took longer drives. And Clemson's defense rose up to the occasion tonight. And they held Alabama scoreless. They may have allowed some plays go down the field, but they made sure they didn't generate points. And that's how Clemson won the national championship, by playing a perfect game. You can't play a game more perfect than that.